Saint Augustine commentary on Psalm 55 following. Behold, I have gone a far fleeing and have abode in the desert. Verse 7. In what desert? Wherever you shall be, there will gather them together other men. The desert with you they will seek, will attach themselves to your life. You cannot thrust back the society of brethren. There are mingled with you also evil men. Still exercise is your due portion. Behold, I have gone afar and have abode in the desert. In what desert? It is perchance in the conscience, whither no man enters, where no one is with you, where you are and God. For if in the desert in any place, what will you do with men gathering themselves together? For you will not be able to be separated from mankind, so long as among men you live. I was looking for him that should save me from weakness of mind and tempest. Verse 8. See, there is tempest, there is, nothing for you remains, but to cry out, Lord, I perish. Matthew 14:30. Let him stretch forth hand who does the waves tread fearlessly. Let him relieve your dread. Let him confirm in himself your security. Let him speak to you within and say to you, Give heed to me, what I have borne. An evil brother perchance you are suffering, or an enemy without art suffering. Which of these have I not suffered? There roared without Jews, within a disciple was betraying. There rages therefore tempest, but he does save men from weakness of mind and tempest. Perchance your ship is being troubled because he in you is sleeping. The sea was raging, the bark wherein the disciples were sailing was being tossed. But Christ was sleeping. At length it was seen by them that among them was sleeping the ruler and creator of winds. They drew near and awoke Christ. Matthew 8:24-25. He commanded the winds, and there was a great calm. With reason then perchance your heart is troubled, because you have forgotten him on whom you have believed. Beyond endurance you are suffering, because it has not come into your mind what for you Christ has borne. If under your mind comes not Christ, he sleeps. Awake, Christ, recall faith, for then in you Christ is sleeping. If you have forgotten the sufferings of Christ, then in you Christ is watching. If you have remembered the suffering of Christ. But when with full heart you shall have considered what he has suffered, will not you, too, with equanimity endure? And perchance rejoicing because you have been found in some likeness of the sufferings of your King. When therefore on these things, thinking you have begun to be comforted and to rejoice, he has arisen, he has commanded the winds, therefore there is a great calm. I was looking for him that should save me from weakness of mind and tempest. Think, O Lord, and divide the tongues of them. Verse 9. He is referring to men troubling him and shadowing him, and he has wished these things not of anger, brethren. They that have wickedly lifted up themselves, for them it is expedient that they be sunk. They that have wickedly conspired, it is expedient for them that their tongues should be divided. To good let them consent, and let their tongues agree together. But if to one purpose there were a whispering against me, he says, all my enemies, let them lose their one purpose in evil, divided be the tongues of them, let them not with themselves agree together. Think, O Lord, and divide the tongues of men. Wherefore think, because themselves they have lifted up. Wherefore divine? Wherefore divide? Because for an evil thing they have united. Recollect that tower of proud men made after the deluge. What said the proud man? Lest we perish in a deluge, let us make a lofty tower. Genesis 11:4. In pride they were thinking themselves to be fortified. They built up a lofty tower, and the Lord divided the tongues of them. Then they began not to understand one another. Hence arose the beginning of many tongues. For before one tongue there was but one tongue for men agreeing was good, one tongue for humble men was good. But when that gathering together did into a union of pride fall headlong, God spared them. Even though he divided the tongues, lest by understanding one another they should make a destructive unity. Through proud men divided were the tongues, through humble apostles united were the tongues. Spirit of pride dispersed tongues, Spirit holy united tongues. For when the Holy Spirit came upon the disciples, with the tongues of all men they spoke, Acts 2:4. By all men they were understood, tongues dispersed into one were united. Therefore, if still they rage and are Gentiles, it is expedient for them divided to have their tongues. They would have one tongue, let them come to the church, because even among the diversity of tongues of flesh, one is the tongue in faith of heart. For I have seen iniquity and contradiction in the city. With reason this man was seeking the desert, for he saw iniquity and contradiction in the city. There is a certain city turbulent, the same it was that was building a tower, the same was confounded and called Babylon, the same through innumerable nations dispersed. Genesis 11:9. Thence is gathered the church into the desert of a good conscience. For he saw contradiction in the city. Christ comes. What Christ? You contradict, Son of God. And has God a son? You contradict, he was born of a virgin, suffered, rose again. And whence is it possible for this to be done? You contradict. Give heed at least to the glory of the cross itself. Now on the brow of kings that cross has been fixed, over which enemies insulted. The effect has proved the virtue. It has subdued the world, not with steel but with wood. The wood of the cross deserving of insults has seemed to enemies, and before the wood itself standing they were wagging the head, and saying, If Son of God he is, let him come down from the cross. Matthew 27:40. He was stretching forth his hands to a people unbelieving and contradicting. For if just he is that of faith lives, Romans 1:17. Unjust he is that has no faith. By that which here he says iniquity, I understand unbelief. The Lord therefore was seeing in the city iniquity and contradiction, and was stretching forth his hands to a people unbelieving and contradicting, and nevertheless waiting for these same. He was saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Even now indeed there rage the remnant of that city, even now they contradict. From the brows of all men now he is stretching forth hands to the remnant unbelieving and contradicting. Day and night they will compass it upon the walls thereof iniquity and labor, upon the walls thereof, upon the fortifications thereof, holding as it were the heads thereof, the noble men thereof. If that noble man were a Christian, not one would remain a pagan. Ofttimes men say, no one would remain a pagan if he were a Christian. Ofttimes men say, if he too were made a Christian, who would remain a pagan? Because therefore not yet they are made Christians, as if walls they are of that city, unbelieving and contradicting. How long shall these walls stand? Not always shall they stand. The ark is going around the walls of Jericho. There shall come a time at the seventh going round of the ark, when all the walls of the city, unbelieving and contradicting, shall fall. Joshua 6:5. Until it come to pass, this man is being troubled in his exercise, and enduring the remains of men contradicting. He would choose wings for flying away, would choose the rest of the desert. Ye let him continue amid men contradicting, let him endure menaces, drink revilings, and look for him that will save him from weakness of mind and tempest. Let him look upon the head the pattern for his life, let him be made calm in hope, even if he is troubled in fact. Day and night there will compass it upon the walls thereof iniquity, and labor in the midst thereof, and injustice. And for this reason labor is there, because iniquity is there, because injustice is there, therefore also labor is there. But let them hear him stretching forth hands. Come unto me, all you that labor. Matthew 11:28. You cry, you contradict, you revile. He, on the contrary, come unto me, all you that labor, in your pride, and you shall rest in my humility. Learn of me, he says, for meek I am and humble in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. Matthew 11:29. For whence do they labor, but because they are not meek and humble in heart? God humble was made, let man blush to be proud. There has not failed from the streets thereof usury and deceit. Verse 11. Usury and deceit are not hidden, at least because they are evil things, but in public they rage. For he that in his house does any evil thing, however for his evil thing does blush, in the streets thereof usury and deceit. Money lending even as a profession, money lending also is called a science. A corporation is spoken of, a corporation as if necessary to the state, and of its profession it pays revenue. So entirely indeed in the streets is that which should have been hidden. There is also another usury worse, when you forgive not that which to you is owed, and the idea is disturbed in that verse of the prayer, forgive us our debts, as we too forgive our debtors. For what there will you do when you are going to pray and coming to that same verse? An insulting word you have heard, you would exact the punishment of condemnation. Do but consent to exact just so much as you have given, though usurer of iniquities. With a fist you have been smitten, slaying you seek, evil usury. How will you go to prayer? If you shall have left praying, which way will you come round unto the Lord? Behold, you say, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done as in heaven so on earth. You will say, Our daily bread give us today. You will come to forgive us our debts as we also forgive our debtors. Matthew 6, 9-12. Even in that evil city, let there abound there these usuries. Let them not enter the walls where the breast is smitten. What will you do? Because there thou and that verse are in the midst. Petitions for you has a heavenly lawyer composed. He that knew what used there to be done said to you, Otherwise you shall not obtain. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that if you shall have forgiven men's sins, they shall be forgiven you. But if you shall not have forgiven sins unto men, neither will your Father forgive you. Matthew 6:14. Who says this? He that knows what there is being done in the place whereat you are standing to make request. See how himself has willed to be your advocate, himself your counselor, himself the assessor of the Father, himself your judge has said, Otherwise you shall not receive. What will you do? You will not receive unless you shall speak. Will not receive if falsely you shall speak. Therefore either you must do and speak, or else what you ask you will not earn. Because they that this do not do are in the midst of those evil usuries. Be they engaged therein that yet do idols, either adore or desire. Do not thou, O people of God, do not thou, O people of Christ, do not thou the body of him the head. Give heed to the bond of your peace, give heed to the promise of your life. For what does it profit you that you exact for injuries which you have endured? Does vengeance refresh you? Therefore, over the evil of another shall you rejoice? You have suffered evil, pardon thou, be not yet two. For if an enemy had upbraided me, verse 12, and indeed above he was troubled in his exercise by the voice of the enemy, and by the tribulation of the sinner, perhaps being placed in that city, that proud city that was building a tower which was sunk, that divided might be the tongues, give heed to his inward groaning because of perils from false brethren. For if an enemy had upbraided me, I would have undergone it assuredly. And if he that did hate me had over me spoken great words, that is, through pride, had on me trampled, did magnify himself above me, did threaten me all in his power, I would hide myself assuredly from him that is abroad. You would hide yourself where? Amid those that are within. But now see whether anything else remains, but that thou seek solitude. But you, he says, man of one mind, my guide and my friend. Verse 13. Perchance sometimes good counsel you have given, perchance sometimes you have gone before me, and some wholesome advice you have given me. In the church of God together we have been. But you that together with me took sweet morsels. Verse 14. What are the sweet morsels? Not all they that are present know. But let them not be soured that do know, in order that they may be able to say to them that as yet know not, Test ye and see how sweet is the Lord. In the house of God we have walked with consent. Whence then dissension? Thou that wast within hast become one without. He has walked with me in the house of God with consent. Another house has he set up against the house of God. Wherefore has wherefore has that been forsaken, wherein we have walked with consent? Wherefore has that been deserted, wherein together we did take sweet morsels?